Hello again. Welcome to Constructive Interference. I am your host, Joel Curtinitis, along with my co-host, Josh Hugo. We're going to get you caught up on what's going on today and cover some topics, hopefully, that you might not have predicted we get into after last week's heavier stuff. But first, hey, Josh, you doing any Christmas shopping lately?
Oh, I have a household manager who does that. My wife. Household managers are really...
Avoid the Me Too moments on the show. Come on, man.
No, I'm totally serious, though. For real, managing a household is a really complex task and demanding task, and she's really good at it. And I think that deserves praise and credit. I mean, certainly no diminishment there by saying that. So my household manager, who is excellent at her job, takes care of most of those things. So I know she's been doing a lot of Christmas shopping.
So you were out shopping for her then?
Well, we got each other a gift for Christmas this year on a Black Friday sale. That was a new washing machine. I mean, a new dryer,
nice.
rather, because our dryer broke, and it was fortunate for us that it broke during Black Friday week. So that was our present to each other.
Isn't it amazing how your priorities change when you get older? I mean, I just remember all I used to care about was electronics on Black Friday. You know, I just scan every single page to see where I could get an extra 40 or 50 bucks off of some new flashy toy that I wanted. And now, like, I'm not even kidding you. The most exciting purchase I've had on Black Friday in years now has been Tires Plus.
Oh, yeah.
Like, seriously, like, I'm not like the places you would not expect. They actually do have Black Friday sales. And I will tell you this. You can stand your butt outside of Target and freeze for 4 hours on the morning of Black Friday, or you can go somewhere like Tires Plus and there's nobody there. So I'm just anybody out there that's, new to this whole adulting thing and trying to get away from the crowds. I'm just saying there's a lot of stores that people might not think about that you can definitely get a good deal at on Black Friday.
Well, see, so now that I'm grown up, though, it's like all my toys are so expensive now. It's like, when I was a kid, it's like, I want a new game. Okay, what's that, like $30? So you want this Lego set? Well, that's like $50. Well, now it's like, I want to get a Chiappa Rhino revolver. That's like $1,000, and I just can't have that. So,
well, yeah, that's a challenge for all of us right there now. Yes. There never seems to be enough in the coffers. So speaking of games, did you look at any new games?
Yeah, I did. The big ones coming out recently, of course, were the new Call of Duty and the new Battlefield games. But I was not really too impressed by either one of them. And it seems like consumers in general weren't either.
Indeed. So, yeah, GameStop, I saw in an article earlier today, lost about $500 million just in the last quarter. It's, I think, 488 or something. Yeah, $488 million they lost in the last quarter, down about 11%.
Wow.
And they've been in decline now for a while. And within the gaming community, there's kind of mixed feelings about this. Because some people are saying, well, it's good because we're moving to virtual and people are downloading the games. There's not as much need for the resale market anymore. Things are getting cheaper and faster. And I can see that. But I also see some of the concerns that people have expressed about, well, GameStop, it had its niche, where you actually could go and resell things. You could go find the older titles. And most of all, there's a place to go connect with people where you can actually talk to an employee who knows something about the game instead of just waiting for somebody to, come unlock the plastic box at Walmart. And so, I can see that, but I also see where that community still exists. It's just moving online, but this is a really big deal. GameStop was hugely successful for a number of years. And so for them to be tanking like this, there's some disruption going on in the market. And, obviously that's going all over the game market. There's tons of changes going on, and the entire industry is not only changing itself, but it's sort of revolutionizing a lot of the American economy and the global economy when it comes to gaming too. It's taking up a bigger and bigger portion of market share. And we've talked about that a few times on the show as well. Just the numbers behind it that are just staggering. I mean, the amount of money that's going into gaming now is just wild. So I guess what Josh, what do you think this impact of this GameStop potential fold up is going to be?
Well, honestly, probably not a whole lot. And that's the reason probably why it's going down. For a long time, there's been a push toward digital, or well, of course, all games are digital, but toward downloading games rather than having discs. And if you get any new game that's made like in the last, I don't know, say 5 or 6 years, even if it's a single player game, when you pop it in, the first thing it wants to do is download 10 gigabytes of stuff to your hard drive. So basically all a physical disc-based game is nowadays is a serial key that gets you the download version. And if that is the case, really, what's the point of having a disc?
Yeah.
So I think GameStop is kind of fallen into that trap where the product that they want to sell is really fairly obsolete at this point.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and I mean they're definitely not alone. I mean there's countless articles about how this precipitous rise of gaming, if you will, is just really changing a lot of things. And it's not just revolutionizing games themselves. The industry that surrounds it is essentially a software industry. And the software industry is changing too because of the way that games are produced, because of the industry that surrounds them. And that I think is adapting. My day job is in IT, and so I look at the trends in the corporate IT world and see a lot of that reflected in gaming as well, where we're moving towards smaller batch sizes, smaller units of delivery, more kind of a continuous improvement approach instead of this old style. We're going to take 6 years developing a game and then wrap it up with a bow and then pitch it out the door and hope people like it. And there's a lot of advantages to that we can get into. But one of the interesting elements that it's changing is actually also the workforce too, where high schoolers now are, a lot of them are very, very capable coders. And so these game companies are actually going out and contracting with young people to go do their coding for them. And of course, they don't need them full time. They just need them there to do a major title. So they'll go get these kids and form some sort of a subcontracting arrangement with them. And they're building an entrepreneurial force in the game industry. It's kind of interesting. I read an article on that not long ago talking about kind of the way that it's changing the labor force in the software world, how gaming itself is doing that. And then, of course, there's the question of revenue models. And revenue models are something that we've mentioned it a couple times, probably with a little bit of angst in our voices here on the program. And there's a reason for that. I mean, there's been some right and wrong responses to the changing revenue model within the game industry. And I think there's just an annoying number of examples of each.
Wrong responses? Sounds like you're going to talk about EA next. You don't get about EA?
Oh, man. Did you hear the edge in my voice?
Nobody likes EA. EA is is on everybody's naughty list, not only for their revenue models and their practice toward customers, but I mean they've been notorious for years for having terrible labor conditions. EA is sort of your archetypal evil, mega corporation trying to suck the souls out from its customers and its workforce for cash. That's
hashtag evil arts.
Yes, yes, evil arts.
Hashtag it, baby.
Perfect. But yeah, I mean that's their reputation, and it's not entirely undeserved. And I think part of that is because the revenue model that you're talking about. So EA released their big new game for the holiday season was Battlefield 5. Battlefield 5 comes after Battlefield 1, which comes after Battlefield 4. Does that make sense? No.
It makes about as much sense as the Xbox One coming after the Xbox 360.
Yes, followed by the Xbox One X, which would be Xbox 9. Anyway, but so I used to be a fan of the Battlefield series. In my opinion, the series actually peaked back in 2010 with the game Battlefield Bad Company 2. Bad Company 2 had a really entertaining campaign. It was really well designed, had a sort of a interesting, not too serious story, sort of mixed up a treasure hunt story with a military story. But that was the game where they introduced the full-scale destruction into the Battlefield franchise. You could actually knock down whole, there'd be a 5-story building, and you could knock down the whole building.
Right.
And it was awesome. It was super cool at the time. Except that, that was
mind-blowing.
Yeah, it was. And it's still cool. But I mean, that was 8 going on 9 years ago. When Bad Company 2 came out, and the Battlefield franchise has really evolved, not at all since then. Battlefield 5.
The word devolved comes to mind.
Oh, I played Battlefield 4. I have not played Battlefield 5, but from what I've seen of it, it's basically the same thing over again. Now, the popularity of the Call of Duty franchise kind of baffles me a little bit. It's actually not as popular as it used to be. Its popularity has been declining, for several iterations now. And I was just reading that although the new game, Black Ops 4, is selling quite well. I mean, it made $500 million in 3 days, which is obviously not chump change, but it's
which
also
tell you something about the standards of Call of Duty as well.
Yeah, but it's also actually a lot less than Black Ops 3 made, and the franchise has been in decline. But the thing about the revenue models for these games is they pump out a new game. In the case of Call of Duty, they pump out a new game every year. In the case of Battlefield, it's about every 2 years to 18 months they'll put out a new game, and they seem to operate with the assumption that they have like a captive market, where players sort of have to buy their game. That the new one comes out every year, and if you don't buy the new one, then you're left behind, and all your friends have got the new one. And then, of course, every new one comes with like 4 or 5 different downloadable DLC packs you have to buy, and you got to buy the new one of those, because if you don't, then you're behind your friends. And
to be fair, it has worked like that for a few years. I mean, as somebody who does game and who has, historically been a Call of Duty gamer, like it does work that way. I mean, you watch everybody pick up the new things and you want it too.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But the thing is, it's about the market changing now. And because of things being so digital now and the internet connecting people so well, I think people are realizing that they have more options now. The two big upstart shooter games in the last couple of years were, of course, Fortnite and sort of the game that sort of preceded Fortnite, ended up being kind of surpassed by it was PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds.
May God rest them.
Well, that game's not dead. I mean, it's not as popular as Fortnite, but it's not dead. Yeah, it's coming to PS4 very soon here. But so that game and also the new Blizzard game, Overwatch.
Mm-hmm. And we talked about this a little bit before the show. I think Blizzard kind of learned their lesson. They've been on both ends of the spectrum for sure, because I remember the old school Blizzard with the of Diablo and StarCraft fame. They had people in a holding pattern waiting for their games to come out forever, and then release products that nobody really asked for, nobody really wanted, and then had to painfully come out of that into something better.
Yeah, I mean, which I think they're definitely successfully doing. Mm-hmm. And you see, with Overwatch, they're really embracing this new revenue model, which I call which I call as if I made this up, but it's an evolutionary release model, where instead of having, Call of Duty 15 comes out, then Call of Duty 16, then Call of Duty 17, et cetera, forever. It's like you have one product come out and that product, evolves. My personal favorite shooter, that I play regularly is Rainbow Six Siege. And Siege has been out for 3 years now. It came out in 2015, and the amount of content in the game has more than doubled. There's more than twice as many characters and maps as there were at the beginning, and you can get all of that for free. Same with Fortnite. Fortnite is actually a free game. You pay nothing to play it. You never have to pay anything to play it.
Well, I should probably be clear on that. Fortnite Battle Royale, which is one portion of the game, is a free game. They have a single player game that's paid, but that's not where most of their money has come from, and that's not where most of their notoriety has come from. So I just wanted to call that out.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah. Well, that should tell you everything you need to know about the Fortnite model right there. Like, people don't even know that they have paid single player content. But just to back up for a minute, when you go, I can't move past EA without breaking bad on them a little bit. Okay. I got Call of Duty World War II. I actually have the game sitting in front of me right now. The actual hard copy remind me of the mistakes that I've made in my life.
Are you using it for a coaster?
Oh my gosh. It's just, okay. So let me just say this first. The Call of Duty series has largely been built on the single player experience. And as far as the single player experience goes, World War II was not bad. I'm not gonna say it's anywhere close to, you're not going to get the feels that you felt in Modern Warfare. Riding out a nuke in a helicopter, that's probably not going to happen, but it's not a bad game. And they returned to their roots, got a lot of celebration for that. And then the loot boxes showed up, and there were game mechanics issues and bugs issues and everything else. But the loot boxes, in terms of revenue model, for those of you that might not be familiar with the concept of a loot box, what happens is basically it's like slot machine. You gamble for an in-game item or weapon or something like that you like. Now, in some cases, these weapons and items grant advantages to you in some games. In other games, they don't. But they're all engineered in such a way that they're ranked in terms of rarities, from really common to uncommon to really rare to sort of epic and legendary. Okay, so there's there's this tiered system of things that you want in game because of how cool they are. And what these developers do is they get you to spend all of your, either earned in-game currency or real life currency, preferably from their perspective, on these loot boxes, which give you a decent chance of getting all this common goods that really nobody cares about and nobody wants. And then a tiny, tiny chance of getting something really cool that you really, really want. And it just keeps you spinning and spinning and spinning in the hopes of hitting these things. And by the way, in the game, they're a real nuisance, real annoyance. They waste your time sorting through all this stuff. And when I say useless things that they're giving you in the common items, I'm talking about like, oh, look, here's a conceptual artwork of an armband that we think might have happened in World War II. I mean, really, like, it's really, really bad stuff. Like, here's some artwork for your knife handle. Only when you're holding a knife, you can't see the handle. So you literally never, ever see it except for the screen where you select it. It's that bad. OK, and they're not alone in this. EA, I think, is the worst and most habitual offender that have just really, really ticked off their community time and time again with it. But there's a company that has been dear to my heart as a Halo fan, is Bungie. They've gone this same way, or a similar way, I'll say. The Destiny franchise with the loot and grind system there, it's very, very it's really frustrating to play the game because they're constantly trying to milk you for real life cash. And you can slog your way through the game at a really slow, painful rate, or you can just drop a bunch of money on it and go get whatever you want. And they both of these companies have been in controversy for what they've done and in conflict with their communities at some point. But like you said, there's some examples of people doing it the good way too. When you look at Fortnite, when you look at what you talked about, Rainbow Six, Rocket League was another one that you brought up earlier. As just some of these game companies are getting it, and thankfully the market's responding.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. So there's really two different ways of looking, at the customer from a development standpoint. There's the EA, Battlefield, Call of Duty model where you think of the customer basically as a resource that you have to capitalize on. You have to put out this constant stream of stuff for them to buy, and they feel like they have to buy it because otherwise they'll get behind. They got to keep up with the gaming Joneses and get the stuff. And then there's other model, which is embraced by Fortnite, by Rainbow Six, where it's more of a service model, where rather than trying to milk the customer for money, you just give the customer the most fun experience that you can give them. You don't milk them for it. You just kind of let them have this experience. And while they're there enjoying themselves, you give them the opportunity to personalize that experience. You give them a means of self-expression to make the game more fun for themselves, or, just to sort of communicate their appreciation back to the company. And people really respond well to that. It's amazing, Joel. I guess, corporate executives don't think of this, but if you treat your customers nicely, it makes them like you.
Well, more and more companies are learning that one way or another, and then the flip side of that is if you continue to mess with your game community and gamers, they will come after you in whatever way possible. One great example of this I saw last week: the Federal Trade Commission is now going to investigate loot box practices.
Well, it's not really gamers coming after you. That's
well, no. I mean, this is how things get attention. The gamer community is one of the loudest online communities in the country. I mean, when they make noise about something, people listen, and people, I mean, all the way from government, all the way down to corporate, over to corporate executives, down to just people in the know. So, I mean, there's all sorts of reactions to that. But I did see last week they are going to be investigating loot boxes, and the premise of it's really interesting. They're actually saying that it should be regulated like gambling because it's gambling, and at least in a lot of game markets, it's aimed at children. So you go get your mom and dad's credit card and you put it in the game and you start to spin those loot boxes in the hopes of getting something rare that you want. So that's the kind of thing that happens when you habitually anger your fan base and your player base. I mean, that's just the natural reaction that people are going to have.
Well, it just goes to show, I guess, the level of of disrespect inherent in that model. Because I mean, you think of a business that does not have its customers' best interests in heart. First of all, you think of the tobacco industry, and secondly, you probably think of casinos. You realize, I mean, casinos with their slot machines, especially, are notorious. Are basically just there to exploit the customers like these cows, that produce cash. And just the fact that the FTC is looking at loot boxes in that way, and not unreasonably so, this really shows the how shady that model is.
Well, right. And so I think what you're going to see is a lot of companies trying to find ways around this now, because, I mean, obviously it's been initially successful for some, even though it was at the cost of an angry player base. And I don't think it's paying out in the long term for them. You also have game studios that are trying to put out sort of a we can have our cake and eat it too situation where, OK, we are going to do the loot box thing, sort of. But we're going to make it, we're going to make it so that you can earn it without spending cash, like real life cash. So you can just kind of slog your way through the game and earn these things over time as well. And the excuse there is that, well, we're just giving people an incentive to invest in the game longer. But the problem is, and I think the shortcoming of this, and this is something that has plagued, again, I'm a Halo guy. And so plagued the Halo franchise through 343 Industries has been that the game isn't changing frequently enough. And that's where I think that's one of the failures of Halo 5 Guardians that people are hoping will be remedied somewhat with Halo Infinite. But that comes out is that, we're looking for that constantly changing dynamic. And the other thing that they have to navigate, and a lot of games I think are going to have to navigate now, is that you have a competitive industry built around gaming that is not the same and is often at odds with the casual gaming community. So you got the average Fortnite gamers want to get on there, have some fun. They want the game to be easy enough to just go in there and kill some time with it and feel good about themselves. But then you have the really competitive people who do this for a living, and you've got Ninja and Tfue and Myth and all these folks who they want it to be precise. It's supposed to be competitive. I mean, you have gaming championships for this reason, right? And there's large dollar amounts at stake. Those competitive environments thrive on predictability. You can't change up the game type all the time and expect competitive people to stay interested. My brother is actually a competitive Halo gamer. And he is constantly fuming about games that are frequently changing up the play style and the dynamics, because if you are a competitive gamer and you're relying on this and developing finely tuned, precise strategies, you don't have that predictability there. And you would never do that in sports, right? You'd never like change the way a football field looks every 5 minutes. And so that's kind of where they're coming at it. So I can see how some of the shooter games have that to work with. But that said, where we're seeing success in games is exactly what you said. Put out a title, and then continue to, at least in a predictable pattern, update the game, bringing fresh content in. And I know for me, like that keeps me interested. I want to know, every week there's a Fortnite update, and they bring new weapons, they bring new locations sometimes, they bring in new items that change the gameplay. I mean, these are things that keep people coming back, and they make you happy. Like you said, I don't feel like they're begging me for cash all the time. They're just putting things in there that I'm going to like to play with, and then seeing if I return the favor by purchasing something in store.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Fortnite's interesting because, a big portion of the fun of the game is just exploring the island. Because they're always putting in like little goofy, like I saw there was like a pianos you could play scattered through the island one time, Mm-hmm. There's always putting little things like this. People can explore it and kind of explore it together. And it becomes, again, a community thing where, my kids were in art class the other day, and one of the other kids in the class was making a painting, and the painting was this weird hamburger sculpture that has appeared in Fortnite recently. And so,
oh yes,
and so my kids recognize it. Yeah, and they're like, "Hey, it's the Fortnite burger." Everybody's like, "Oh, that's fun," So weirdly enough, it was like they all had this shared experience having been to this same place and seen something fun, and they all recognized it. Of course, that wasn't a real place; it was in Fortnite. But
and what's amazing is that it's not like Epic Games came up with this. I mean, we're not gonna act like Epic Games came up with this. All just sat up and had this idea in the shower one day and came up with a completely new game type. I mean, a lot of this obviously has been built up to this point by other game studios, but credit to them for taking it in a direction nobody has before, where the sky is the limit for them at this point. But I think one of the, again, my day job is in tech. And I think one of the philosophies that we adopt there that really has revolutionized the gaming industry in the ways that we're talking about is the concept of CI/CD, which is continuous improvement and continuous integration, continuous deployment. And those two aspects, to avoid the tech speak here, that just means that you're constantly creating new features and merging them into your existing product to where it's changing things. And what that does for you is it creates these feedback loops where you can change something in the game, you submit it to your user base, they tell you if they like it or not, and then based on that feedback, you can either adjust it, take it out, add something else to counterbalance it. You can make all these changes on the fly instead of releasing a major title and having people complain about it for 3 or 4 years and watching your business tank before you can get a new title out. And it's a much faster, much better approach to it. And like you said, it allows people to have that experience where they can invest in a game for a longer period of time, to where it makes sense to develop an identity of sorts of virtual identity in that game. I don't have any reason to invest and create a virtual identity in a game that's going to be obsolete and I'll have to buy a new one in a couple months. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. But for these games that are continuously updated, I do. I mean, I'll tell you right now, I go out there and I find skins that I like. I'll find emotes that I like. And yeah, sure. I mean, I didn't pay anything for the game. I don't feel bad dropping $5 or $10 on style items,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Yeah, and again, that's that emphasis there where the game is serving you, not vice versa. It's like you're having fun, and then you want to do something to personalize your own experience instead of having it dictated to you by evil arts telling you what you're going to buy now, and you're going to like it.
Right. And it is both ways too, because and this is where I think the really exciting part of the future of gaming is coming into play, and that is I am doing them good just by playing the game. And this is without any advertising, because the size of their audience is the market share that they command. And I'm talking specifically about Fortnite right now because they're kind of at the top of their game. But the market share that they command is largely dictated by, how much time I spend on the game, how much time I spend, viewing content creators on Twitch and on YouTube. These are places that have a ton of influence. And one of the other major elements that a game studio can get completely right or completely wrong is how they interact with their community. Now, it used to be you released a game and it was a one-way street. I mean, I never got to tell Microsoft how I felt about Age of Empires. I just bought the disc, I went home and played it, and that was that. But that's not that way anymore. I mean, you put out a game, and if it's not what the consumer expects, you're going to hear about it, and your stockholders are going to know about it. And, on the other side, if you put out something wildly successful, the community is going to let you know that they like it, and they're going to come out in support of you. And it's a really fascinating. Like, I love being a gamer. I love being part of the game community, because it's a community that is, vibrant and adaptive and very passionate about what we do. And, seeing the way that companies respond to this, I think, is a great indicator of where a company is actually going to go. I mean, you have companies who are somewhat deceptive in the way that they respond to criticism and critique. You have some that, again, not to completely harp on EA, but their chief creative officer behind Battlefield, when he was confronted with, criticism of the game having too much of a political narrative, he basically said, if you don't like it, don't buy it, which is just about the worst response that I can imagine someone giving in a game community. But, when you look at the right way, you see game producers who are constantly scouring Reddit, who are constantly looking at the message boards, constantly monitoring social media, interacting on Facebook and Twitter with their fans, and coming up with ideas for new content from their players. I mean, you have created the ultimate feedback loop now, where players are giving you the ideas to sell them. Content creators have an impact on the game more than you might even know. You were talking about exploring the map on Fortnite. I follow an Australian YouTuber and Fortnite gamer by the name of, he goes by the moniker of Muselk. Really entertaining guy. He had a hilarious affair where he was trying to help someone get safely away from the edge of the map, and in a funny course of events, it backfired and the guy went flying off the map and died. Okay, but the next patch update that came out, Epic Games actually put a gravestone out there for this guy. This player that had gotten kicked off the map. I mean, it was, and that's what they patched into the game. It was like this little memorial for Muselk and his buddy that got stranded trying to get back on the map, and it was hilarious. It's that little thing, those little Easter eggs, those little nods. They didn't have to do that. They had to pay a developer to go out and do that for sure. But it was worth it, because the acknowledgement that got them, the views that it got them, the influence that it bought is something that you could never get in the loot box. You just could never pay for that.
Yeah. And I think this kind of to broaden this out from video games out to the arts in general, that really is, I think, what the relationship of an artist to his audience should be. Here we have the artists at Epic are trying to think of what is best for their audience. What will make the audience have the most enjoyment, what will make the audience feel most appreciated. And that's a totally different mindset from having like this sort of an arrogant ivory tower artist personality who thinks he knows everything and kind of looks down on his audience. Which to me, the Oscar community sort of typifies that, where you always have the awards going to these movies that nobody actually cares about or watched. And
right, this is what we think you should like.
Yes, exactly. This is what we think you should like, and if you don't like what we told you to like, then you're stupid. Which is exactly the opposite of the relationship. I guess a healthy artist audience relationship, which the artist is thinking, how can I basically help? How can I help my audience to be better, to feel better, to have more enjoyment and more edification in their experiences? Yeah,
absolutely. And when you look at it, there's a lot of that element that is in the game review and analysis industry as well. When you look at places like Metacritic, there is definitely that condescension that you see there. And it's amazing. I really would never have thought growing up. I never would have thought of video games as something that's definitively blue collar, but it's kind of becoming that way. And, whether you want to talk about it from the social and cultural perspective of Ready Player One, where just, the world is going to continue moving in that direction for everyone, or just looking at, the current situation with it doesn't really matter. You're going to have people who deem themselves the gatekeepers, right? And in this case, it's, just like what we were talking about with other forms of entertainment, you've got the reviewers and the critics. And the reviewers and the critics sometimes are actual hardcore gamers, and sometimes they are otherwise motivated, political activists or people who have something to say about it because they've migrated here from another industry, or they've just got a really strong opinion that doesn't necessarily have to do with the game in question as much as their own worldview and viewpoints that they want to inject into it. And frankly, gamers just get tired of it. I mean, we've tolerated this kind of stuff in movies forever, but don't leave my games out of this. I just want to go out and save the universe. You don't need to tell me, what I should like because of the narrative that's being portrayed in this. It's a decision I should make for myself. And I think that you're going to see going forward, as the game titles and as the game studios multiply and as the titles begin to break away from just the big AAAs, and you start to see the success of some of these smaller companies and smaller titles, I think you're going to see more variance on that. I think you're going to see it break apart just like the movie industry, and it's going to grow and open up more avenues where you'll have games that are, more what I would call the Michael Bay type games, where you're just flying around a giant robot shooting stuff. And then you're going to have the more thoughtful, the more philosophical ones, like what was the one that you were showing me earlier this week, Josh?
Oh, the new Kojima game?
Yes.
Well, yeah, I don't know how thoughtful that'll be. It hasn't come out yet, but if it follows his typical mold, I mean, Kojima games usually have really dense lore and these sort of deep philosophical plots. It was Death Stranding was the name of the game.
Right.
And look at the trailers. I don't have no idea what it's going to actually be about or what you do in it, but it looks really fascinating. It's almost like you have this it looks like sort of a ghost apocalypse where the Earth has been taken over by this malevolent, invisible force. And people are just kind of trying to survive under these new rules that they suddenly find themselves in. So I don't know if that'll be good or not. It really looks interesting. But I think the broader point there is just the opportunity for diversity and variety. It's so we have a game here with Death Stranding. We have this game where I'm looking at this, and my reaction to it and the reaction of other people who have seen these trailers is not thinking, oh, that looks awesome, or oh, that looks epic and huge, and look at the explosions, I like to be a giant robot. What they're getting is this mood, and it's this really intensely eerie sort of spooky mood, and everybody's like wondering what is going on here in this world. And the appeal of these trailers for Death Stranding is sort of wondering, what secrets are there to uncover, in this world? Which I guess you kind of get out of like Legend of Zelda type games. Those are usually a lot more cartoonish, a lot more fantasy. This game is like a much more, it's a very cinematic, realistic looking game, a modern science fiction type setting. But again, the appeal here is not that it looks awesome, I get to blow up stuff. The appeal is the mystery and the mood and the aura surrounding it.
Right. Yeah. And so that's, I think the malleability of the game industry is kind of what's what I think is setting it up to be the medium of the future. I mean, you can take any number of things from the adventurism to the escapism to the more philosophical and surreal elements that you can surround yourself with and say, and this is where I think games like Minecraft and No Man's Sky come into play. It's not necessarily I wonder what it would be like to walk in this character's shoes as much as it is, I wonder what it would be like to walk in my own shoes in this, uncharted environment. And so I just see so much potential there. And I hope that with these changes that are coming in the gaming industry, that we'll see more game studios take advantage of that opportunity and start expanding and create, really treating this medium with the respect it deserves and treating the customer base with the respect that we deserve, honestly. So we're going to, we're going to ask you if you agree with us on that this week. It's going to wrap up the show. But if you're not following us on social media, we've been talking about this for what? This is just 9 weeks now. Can you believe that? It's ninth episode that we're on now, and people are still not following us on social media.
I know,
although
it's
in fairness, it's only been a few weeks that we've actually been talking about our social media. So if you're not on it, get on Facebook, look us up at facebook.com/TheCI Show and on Twitter @TheCI Show. We will be putting out questions and asking for you guys to give us your feedback. What are your favorite games? What are the titles that you're playing right now? Where do you think the gaming industry is going? These are things we'd love to hear back from you, and we'll look forward to continuing the conversation this week. Thanks for joining us today. We will talk to you next time.